I want to transition. Yeah, I'm going to transition into this next slide a little bit, and we've already been touching on it a little bit. Going back to a question that Rob asked of Ben and Lisa, we have certainly seen, and as Fred was just identifying, the power of digital and emerging media tools that are on young people's phones, that are on all of our phones, as a means of creating public narrative, awareness in real time, and disseminating messages that are not mediated through a newsroom or an editorial process that might pick and choose what it wants to present. I want to underscore something that I think is really important that I've seen is how powerful that is. You know, for example, right now, young people organizing marches with a couple hours notice in Milwaukee, that's absolutely one manifestation of that kind of development. But another one is exactly what Ben and Lisa were talking about, which is the powerful tools being used to indoctrinate young people into alt-right, where, I mean, to touch on a point a lot of people have been making, it's not saying, do you hate people of color? It's saying, are you interested in counterculture? Are you disillusioned? Here's a thing that's sarcastic and ironic, and you know, you can go and disrupt and kind of do some of those things that young people are attracted to. So I think like a very important point to keep in mind is, as powerful of tools as they are in identifying things like George Floyd's wrongful death, there's also folks on the right that are incredibly adept at using those in these memes, Pepe the Frog, all these other things, these ways of disseminating those messages is really powerful in groups like the alt-right and in all those places, those kind of those underbelly places that Lisa was mentioning before.
I think that's absolutely correct, Adam. And we see it on the kind of what I would say is the micro level for the individual and community, and then we see it on the macro level. We just saw this past, what was it, 2 weeks ago now, where Twitter started labeling Trump's tweets as problematic or promoting violence. And then you have basically a day later, a few days later, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder and leader of Facebook, saying that they're not going to do that. You have folks in the tech industry attempting to be pragmatic, but really being complacent and complicit and protecting, their investments, protecting the capital of their investors and all that, and basically enabling, a tyrant. And then you have immediately after that, Trump, with his narcissism and selfishness, signing an executive order to try to limit social media. You see so many forms of manipulation. I'm sure all the researchers and educators here are probably aware of the things around Cambridge Analytica. There's a great docudrama with Benedict Cumberbatch from Sherlock and Dr. Strange fame. That's really great to watch, but there's also a really great documentary, I believe, on either Netflix or HBO, about the real people who were behind all that. And as an organizer, I look at all those things, and I having the experience doing what I've done, and data analytics being a huge part of that. Really, how just truly widespread that digital manipulation is. And so, for those who don't know about Cambridge Analytica, long story short, it's formerly a British company that helped to do data analytics and data persuasion, as they call it, for the Brexit campaign, which is the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, which was successful. Cambridge Analytica was funded in part by an American billionaire, a right-wing billionaire named Robert Mercer. I believe he's out of California. And those same tools were used to do a lot of what the manipulation that happened during Brexit, and that doesn't even include what the Russians did. Cambridge Analytica basically created detailed, not just like, you know, you go to the grocery store every 5 weeks and so they know what you buy kind of, you know, synopsis of people's habits, but they created basically detailed psychological profiles of tens of millions of people. And by doing that, they were able to digitally manipulate tens of millions of people. Um, and even today, and there's conjecture, like literally yesterday, there was a thing going around saying, you know, black out your profile, Blackout Tuesday. Um, and, you know, part of some of those types of things, you know, you end up manipulating people to quiet themselves. Um, and so whether that was, you know, partly legit or not, the effect of those types of things is that you're quieting people or you're manipulating people to go into a certain direction. Um, and, you know, there's a lot of data that shows there were bots and things by, you know, different entities during the 2016 election that were used to manipulate the viewpoints of, let's say, somebody who's I also think is problematic, Hillary Clinton, but to manipulate people's views of her who were black based on, you know, perception and, you know, a lot of, you know, to be fair, a lot of misogyny, a lot of patriarchy directed um, to Secretary Clinton's campaign. And, you know, it was in a lot of ways successful. And, you know, despite everything that, you know, definitely were problems with their campaign in and of itself, it definitely was, if you want to say, the nail in the coffin to a lot of the success that they probably could have had. So it's definitely a double-edged sword that can and will and is literally right now as we speak being used against and for people being liberated.
We thank you, folks. You know, we want to, let me say a couple things. One, we're going to end up going over the 1 o'clock hour. We've got some panelists who will have to dip out, and we know some folks here on our webinar who may not be able to stay beyond. We're targeting about 1:15 or so, maybe 1:20 for us as to get through the next couple of sections.